Hey cousins, I'm Shemaya. It's like papaya, except it's not, and this is Plot Twist Please. Let's get into it. You're in 6th grade. It's lunchtime and everyone is gathering in the most polarizing, terrifying, culture-defining spots in middle school history. The cafeteria. I know, triggering, so sorry. But it gets worse. It's the first day of the new school year and the unspeakable has happened. You are the new kid in school. If you've been there, I see you. We see each other. Plus, it's the setting for the most action and major plot moments in movies about teenagers. But I have a question. Why is it that this location, a cafeteria, in this context, creates a visceral response? Why is it such a storytelling goldmine? Well, muffins, that's why I decided on today's topic. Can you guess what it is? Yes, I know you've already seen the title of the video, but indulge me for a second. What's the one thing every middle schooler fears the most? The one thing that is sure to greet us in every stage of adulthood thereafter. The thing that humanizes and humbles us all. Rejection. Let's talk about it. But wait! Before we do that, feel free to like this video so YouTube knows you like this video, share the podcast for the algorithm, or comment below your favorite cafeteria food. For me, it was always the pizza. The pizza had something, it knew what it was doing. If you've never been here before, hi, I'm Shemaya, and I'm an autistic Black woman who wants to use pop culture to make our brains a little cozier, and maybe at the same time subvert the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. We'll see if we get that far. So, welcome, and hit that subscribe button if you don't hate my face. Now, there's this thing that a lot of autistic people experience, and it's rejection-sensitive dysphoria. It, in short, is a problem that interferes with one's ability to regulate their emotional responses to perceived failure or rejection. Is this episode a cure for that? No, but maybe I have something that can help you. In order to help you, I've come up with 3 main fallacies that people who suffer from this tend to tell ourselves. This analysis here is based on my own experience as well as the sources in the description below, so make sure to check those out. So, let's debunk, shall we? Chapter 1. The first fallacy is, this person is being nice, must be pity. Or also known as, I'm receiving kindness. Do I deserve it? I think what I'm about to talk about is a pretty common autistic experience, but if you have no idea by that introduction alone what I'm about to talk about, strap in, buckle up, peanut. So there's this thing, and we've healed, right? We've healed from this at this point, but there is in fact this thing that happens that a lot of autistic women and girls, AFABs if you will, experience, where people, typically other women, girls, AFABs, will befriend them, and then one day the autistic person is informed, either verbally or indirectly, that they were never really friends. Like that they just felt bad, so they pretended that they were friends. And oftentimes, more often than not, they admit this to the autistic person after the autistic person asks them, hey, are things okay between us? Because you're kind of acting weird. Turns out, no, things are not all right, and they never were. Look, it sounds crazy. I know, it sounds weird, but I promise you, it's a real thing. Now, mind you, this is not coming from a place of bitterness. It's just more matter of fact. A lot of people, especially when they are younger and don't yet have strong communication skills or maybe even discernment, really, they do, in fact, pity autistic people, whether they'd like to admit it or not. And so what happens is we end up in a situation where one party is afraid to tell the other party that they're not into the friendship, and the other party is blissfully unaware until the world comes crashing down. It's kind of like if you woke up one day and your partner who said, oh, it was never real, like I never liked you, or I'm like a secret agent and I was paid to pretend to like you. It's kind of like that. That's how that would feel. That's whatever you just felt just now, that's how it feels. Kind of. Now, I tend to view these kinds of dynamics similarly to those kinds of romantic situations where there's a person who really wants a relationship and the other person in the dynamic doesn't want to tell the other person that they're not into them. And neither of these choices, I would say, are kind. What I will say, however, is that friendships are more dicey, I think, because there's no real exit interview or pre-relationship interview either. What I mean is, when you are courting or dating, you say, this is what I'm looking for, and this is the start of this thing that we are about to embark upon. Hopefully you do that. Listen to me. This is Auntie Shemaya speaking. Do not skip that part. But you don't really do that for friendships. Either you're in them or you're not, and there's no way to know either way but to wait for one of you to stop contacting the other. But I'd also like to challenge that thought. I want to challenge the idea that romantic relationships take more work than platonic ones. Because if I'm being real, for real, these streets, these dating streets will leave you with skid marks on your back. But you know who's going to be there with a box of tissues and a full pepperoni pizza, hot and ready, after someone emotionally runs over your heart with a Jeep? Your friends. No, I'm not saying to not invest in romantic relationships if that's what you really want. I'm just saying that if we should, that maybe perchance, we should put in just as much energy into our platonic friendships as we do in our romantic relationships. Because either way, the people involved have something to lose. Now, there isn't data, to my knowledge, that proves that this is more common among autistic women than men, but I only see late diagnosed autistic women talking about it. And, after learning about this phenomenon, you might understand why many of us would fall into that mental trap of, they're being nice, must mean they're faking it. I've seen this before. If you're someone who tends to think this way or experience this kind of trauma, I gotta tell you something. Sometimes they're not faking it. And at risk of sounding completely cliche and oversaccharine, people will surprise you. I mean, they don't surprise you too much because, people will tell you who they are. You just gotta listen. But shutting yourself off from the world is not a solution. Maybe you do want to be a nomad, and that's desirable for you and peaceful and lovely to think about. Love that for you, period, queen. That's an option. Go out there in your RV and live your life in the wilderness. But if you are someone who desires connection, loneliness is not going to cut it for you. It's just not going to be it. Being by yourself all the time is not going to scratch that itch. Listen, The Bear is a great show. Great writing, great actors. But a TV show cannot hold you at night. A streaming service cannot show up at your birthday party with a cake you didn't have to bake yourself or buy with your own money. A good book cannot hold your head in its lap when you lose a family member. Listen. Look at me. I'm telling you this because I know. I know what it feels like to be terrified of it all being a quote lie. I know what it feels like to close the drapes and say, I give up on this. It's not for me. When I desperately wanted to connect. But, and I've said it before, there are people in my circle who have literally loved me back to life. And only a person can do that. Sorry to disappoint you, but that's the way it is. That's the way it goes. Those are the cards we're dealt as humans. Bell Hooks said in her book, All About Love, rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. And I absolutely agree with that. All right, moving on to chapter 2. The second fallacy a lot of autistic people interchange is, they seem indifferent. I must have done something terrible. Now, some of us, autistic or not, neurodivergent or not, have trained ourselves to believe that silence or indifference is a personal attack or a sign of failure. And look, I'm not here to shame you for that. I get it. But allow me to release you from this emotional roller coaster that we have willingly strapped ourselves into, with some help of our childhood trauma, of course. Because as someone who doesn't spend a ton of time actively disliking people, most people, I can attest to the fact that most people don't have the time or energy to dislike you. And some people also might display what you perceive as indifference in one particular instance, but they actually care about you a lot. Maybe they just couldn't say, I love you so much, you literal ray of sunshine, blah, 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 because they're swamped at work or are tired. People get tired. Rent increases and wages don't. And people get tired. Of course, all things in moderation, right? You still have to show up for your friends. But we gotta stop interpreting other people's lack of investment in us as a personal failure, whether they mean to pull away or not. In the same vein, when someone says, don't worry about that embarrassing moment, they probably aren't thinking of you at all. The unhealed version of Shemaya feels like, y'all are not being as helpful as you think you are. Because what do you mean? They should be thinking about me often. Everyone should. If people aren't obsessed with me, why do I even exist? Now listen, I said it's the unhealed version of me. Don't come for me, y'all. You know what it's like as an entertainer, as an actor, aka someone who needs to constantly be humbled. I hate that phrase. Oh, they're probably not even thinking of you. Because I'm just like, oh, good. That means I'm an insignificant mustard seed in the face of the earth. But anywho, the version of Shemaya that has seen some things and gained perspective thinks, I actually don't need everyone to be thinking about me all of the time in order to be valuable. I know. The college theater babies are doing backflips in their cradles. I can see it. It sounds wild, but I promise you still have value even when no one is obsessed with you. I promise. I'm saying this kind of to me as well, so we are here together. Personally, I've found that detaching my perception of myself from how others perceive me has proven the most rewarding. That's the thing about creating a platform based on your disability. It kind of nulls that whole, but maybe they think I'm weird. Like, it kind of desensitizes you from that hang up. Because it's like, okay, and what? My bills are still paid? And what? And then you're kind of free in that instance to be yourself, which is nice. Imagine that. The last chapter is going to have some hard to swallow pills involved. Sorry, I could stay away from these points that I'm about to shove down your throat. You've been forewarned. Chapter 3, the last fallacy that says, the nature of this relationship has changed. I must have done something wrong. That's what we're going to talk about now. It took me a long time to realize that relationships are allowed to change. Not only that, but that they can change at no fault of any individual person. I know that sounds really elementary, but we do these things when relationships end, where we try to find a villain. We need to, where we need someone to blame, whether it's the other person or ourselves. Our cruel brains do this. They do this to us as an attempt to make sense of the loss, but it's not really helpful. Is it cathartic? Yes. Can it further damage the people who didn't actually do anything wrong? Also, yeah. And this is where the lashing out and the self-sabotage and the blaming ourselves for things we couldn't control and starting mental cycles that we will need to unravel in therapy, and wanting revenge come into play. Now listen, sometimes relationships do end because y'all being messy, but more often than not, they just end. And unfortunately, that's part of life. Here's what I think is cool, though, about relationships ending. When it hurts, it means it meant something. And in a world full of millions of people, trillions of people doing their own thing, going through their own lives, focusing on themselves, the fact that one person, can mean that much in a world full of people is kind of a miracle. Because if someone can mean that much to you, then you can mean that much to someone else. No, not doing it for you? Okay. Let's try again. Better to have lived and loved than not loved at all. Still nothing? Okay, all right. Okay, we're going through the archives. We're sifting through. We're workshopping, moving some words around. Carry the 1 times 12. All right, I have it. All right, I have it. This is gonna cure you. Roses are red, violets are blue. Tape is sticky, but so is hot glue. All right, I'm out of ideas. So I don't know. Like, you're gonna have to read some bell hooks or something. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And I hope it was helpful. I really do hope it was, because writing this, I kind of started welling up because I was thinking about all the things that I blamed myself for when relationships didn't go the way that I wanted them, or when I didn't get what I wanted out of them. But you can always get something out of a relationship, whether you can learn something about yourself, whether you can learn how to navigate different kinds of conflicts, to communicate your needs. I feel like that's what relationships are for, to teach us. At the end of the day, they're not there for us to extract something from people, to say, gimme. I think that they're teachers. Do with it what you will. All right, that's all I have for you. Don't forget to like this video, to share this episode, and to subscribe to this podcast. I love seeing your face. Be blessed. Stay weird. Bye. Ooh.